Squirm squads. Time to go find and get this thing rolling.
You know, I've realized something.
Yeah.
What?
This game has been Carmine's best run so far. He's actually managed to outlive one of the main Delta Squad members.
Yeah,
Story-wise, when you get down to it.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
So, yeah, great improvements, Carmine. Great improvements.
Well, let's have to wait and see what was the fans' decision. Because remember, this Carmine got the chance to live if the fans deemed it so. So we'll have to wait and see what
so
the
it
fans.
comes down to this, folks. Would the fans want the cycle to be broken, or would they want to keep tradition as traditional as possible?
No, I'm not gonna make that joke.
Oh, geez, Tickers.
Actually, no. These are wretches.
They're called wretches.
Oh,
are
right. No,
these
yeah,
are-
the Lambent variant.
Yep, the Lambent version of Tickers. As you can imagine, they're worse than Tickers because they're a lot more cunning and quicker too.
And just like any Lambent, they burst into acid, essentially.
Well, think about
Emotion.
it right now. Okay, think about it like this, Theo. Tickers were already meant to explode. Now combine that with a Lambent version, and well, yeah, you're looking
Hello.
at something pretty nasty. You shot him in the butt.
ass.
Again,
All
it's
of this just to get some fucking submarine parts.
you gotta say
Seriously.
it's pretty sad when regular locusts are a much more welcome sign compared
Yeah,
to
the lesser
standard-
evil.
Well, to be honest, it's not like they can go to the shop and buy submarine parts.
Just order on Amazon. I'm pretty sure these world has an equivalent to
Well,
it.
technically, this is a post-apocalyptic world, so
Although,
kind of, not to the extent of something like Walking Dead or Last of Us, but it is after a major war that basically destroyed much of the world and stuff.
Actually, I forgot to
okay,
ask.
and this-
to be fair though, Pedro, as Death Stranding would show, a company like Amazon would probably find a way to
Probably.
If Monster
profit even in
could,
a
I don't see why Amazon
post-apocalyptic world.
couldn't. Yeah.
Plus, considering how WWE still manages to make programming, even considering the situation that we're in now at the time of this recording, they'll probably continue having wrestling matches during an apocalypse like this.
But I forgot to ask. Aside from Jack, of course, do any of the later games actually do have other kind of floating drones, more similar to the one we are currently using IRL?
Oh, you mean as allies?
Well, for any occasion, I guess.
No. You don't have alternative ones. Like, it's always the one designated robot the game gives you.
Okay.
The closest you get is in 5, where you can where the new Jack in 5 has a skill tree, you know, that you unlock via little collectibles that give you skill points. It's just as bare bones as the skill tree in Quantum Break. To be honest, it's nothing to write home about. It's just kind of there. Like it's not even a matter of don't get me wrong. There's some nice little skills here and there, but it's nothing game changing. It's not really.
Especially considering Jack, as far as I know, at least at this point, Jack is a glorified door opener. Like, he doesn't do that much aside from that.
Well. If it helps you to, Jack in Gears 5 can fight alongside us, and he also does it a bit in the climax of this game as well, because Baird has been tinkering with him off screen.
If you want something like, sentries or whatnot that can aid you in battle, I'm not quite sure. Well, okay, maybe in the multiplayer game, but campaign-wise, Gears of War is not really the thing.
In Gears 5, you can actually play as Jack in the multiplayer. So.
Huh.
Yeah. Anyway, Dwibs.
He's burped.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, it's I don't know. Personally, I don't mind it. Like, I think Jack in general has just become, the de facto robot that we all know from the first game. It's kind of like R2-D2 from Star Wars. He's the bot that we all know and love, so we like it that he's constantly there. So whatever. Personally, I'm perfectly fine with only Jack, to be honest. Sometimes they do mix it up, and have, like in 4, where we have a robot that's not Jack and even has a different name, but he does the exact same things as Jack does. Like it might as well have been Jack. So whatever.
Oh, but don't you see? It's not Baird piloting him, so it's not Jack.
True. No. True, and that makes sense. Lore-wise, that makes sense. Yeah, I'm not.
I think even Judgment, your droning Judgment is Jack.
No, you. Wait, is it? Hold on.
Considering Bird is in the game, like...
Yeah, probably. No, it's been a while, so I don't... But I think...
Onto the Gears Wiki, man, I'm sure that was not gonna spoil me that much.
I think so. Now that I'm thinking harder a bit, I think it is yet another... Yeah, like Theo said, yeah, it's Baird, so yeah. Baird is the protagonist of Gears of War Judgment. So...
Phew.
Too bad it's Baird as written by Tom Bissell.
Again, Tom Bissell seems to be a guy who just gets progressively worse with every story. Like, Judgment is at worst dull.
Well, no, Judgment is just kind of It's
exactly what I said. It's like, okay. At its absolute worst, it's just dull. Then you get to Gears of War 4, where at its worst, it's annoying, but not necessarily god-awful. No, that's what Gears of War 5... Gears 5 is for.
I wouldn't still go so far to say that Gears 5 story is awful. It's just very heavily flawed and confused about what the hell is it doing.
I guess it depends on your perspective. Like, okay, if you're someone who's a fan of the older cast, you are probably going to find it to be awful with how much
it's one of those
characters here.
Maybe it's because I didn't grow up with the series, unlike a lot of fans. But like I had basically steamrolled through the entire series, God of War style. Like I literally went from 1 to 5 all the way, thanks to Game Pass.
It's really something that does depend on how much of a connection you had with the franchise, but the general consensus seems to be that a lot of people regard the campaign of Gears 5 as pretty awful.
I actually like it. I actually like it when I'm able to get into a franchise in the way that I've done with God of War in this one, like where long after, like instead of having grown up with it, I just steamroll for the entire series, marathon style, you know. And since I didn't grow up with a certain game, I find myself much easier for me to have a more objective outlook on things because I don't have any kind of nostalgic bias, possibly clouding my judgment. You know.
I know how you feel. That's sort of how I felt when Q introduced me to the Ace Attorney series.
That's one of the things that really made me glad that I did that for God of War, because it allowed me to properly assess the situation when it comes to the new one. Where
that said, I will say that it can sometimes vary between series if binging it from the get-go can work out. Like, there are some game series that I would absolutely not recommend binging, no matter how good they are, you know.
I guess it depends.
Persona
like
comes
if
to mind.
Like what? Sorry.
Persona comes to mind. Like,
well, Persona games are 100-hour RPG, so obviously that's not really a good idea of binging. Yeah, definitely. It depends on the game, but I knew going in that God of War games, outside of the most recent one, are like 8, 9, 10-hour games each, so it's not that they're long.
I think the thing about the Gears franchise is like,
same for these,
it's a franchise that you will get the best experience out of if you experience both the single-player campaign and the multiplayer. Of course, you know, you and me, we're not really into the multiplayers of games like these, so, you know, the campaign is really the main thing for us.
No, for me it's more the campaign. Like when it comes to multiplayer, like I'm into Uncharted multiplayer. When it comes to this one, by this point it's not like I'm playing it on its heyday or anything, so I don't really get the same experience that the fans would have had back in the day. So I didn't feel the need to be honest. Not to mention I need Xbox Gold subscriptions, which I don't want. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Apparently, Jack is not the bot that appears in Judgment, but he does appear in the Ram Shadow DLC, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, he's the one saving Gears 5. So let me check instead his series number, like the model.
Baird in 5 is basically the Q of the game. You know, he's the one who basically. Yes, go ahead.
Gives out all the gadgets.
Yeah.
Right, and let me guess. The bot in Judgment is a prototype for Jack.
Keep in mind that at least the wiki calls Jack just the entire model line, so that's like what they're called, the standard models.
So it's just a case of it being a different Jack.
At the end of the day, it just boils down to same robot, different name, really, because they never really give any of these robots any kind of distinctive personality traits. It's not like R2-D2, which has which they managed to draw some really good personality out of it, even despite not having dialogues. And his banter and his shenanigans with C-3PO are always fun. So it's not like that at all. Like to give credit, there is one really. I'll just say this without spoiling anything. It's sad how the only character. It's sad how Jack was the only character, and I'm putting character in the saying character is a stretch because, like I said, these robots don't really have that much personality. It's sad how Jack, of all characters in 5, was the one I was most invested in. I'll just say that was pretty sad, but that's all I'll say for now.
Anyway, Dwibs, you're back now. Something I wanted to ask you.
Sure, shoot.
Regarding the current state of affairs, how would wrestling even work since that kind of involves contact and,
Basically, how WWE are doing it is that they own something called a performance center, which is basically their own gym of sorts for wrestling. They have all rings there and all the equipment and all that. And they converted it into a makeshift studio to film to shoot all their events, with the exception of a few odd special wrestling matches where they film it as if it was a mini movie.
So they're able to film it in a way that the wrestlers don't actually have to touch each other, but it looks like they're wrestling.
There's still a lot of close contact.
Well, Jova, COVID tests are a thing. They could just test them before they go into the ring, maybe.
And surprisingly, at least wrestling wise, at least how it applies to the wrestlers, there hasn't been a case of it yet.
Huh, neat.
AEW, who are WWE's biggest alternative right now, they do pretty much the same thing.
Okay. Alright, mech suit time.
But yeah, no, it's one of those cases where sometimes I really enjoy catching up on a franchise like Gears or God of War, like in that route, because it allows me to have a much better perspective than I would otherwise have. Because thanks to that, I was able to really come to the conclusion that there's quite a lot of God of War fans out there that don't seem to understand the series. Like people who, some purists who complain that's how, what is this? Why isn't Kratos killing people and why is he taking care of a kid? Okay, if you don't think God of War is about family, then you don't understand God of War. That's all I'll say for now.
Okay, the easiest way to tell somebody doesn't know what's up with God of War is if they assume that Kratos is 100% just angry bearded guy.
Which is completely false.
Technically speaking, it can still be. It's just that it's doing that in a different manner. How is that, too hard to understand?
Well, that's the thing, though. It's like, what I'm saying is, like, people assume that he's that 100% of the time. Really, there's a lot more to him than just that.
Anyway, I did check the Jack model that appears in Judgment is called Troy. Good to know.
Is there another one called Baker?
No. Troy remained unnamed. Here's the trivia. Troy remained unnamed for most of Gears of War Judgment, unlike his counterpart Jack. In-game was only mostly just referred as the bot. It was only dubbed Troy by Bird moments before something happens. Probably spoilery about Judgment.
Let's get that door open.
For me, it's like this, Jova. Like, Gears of War Judgment has its moments here and there, but overall, it's very mediocre. For Gears of War 4... sorry, go ahead, too. You were...
No, go ahead. I'm checking something in the meantime.
Gears of War 4, like I've said off the commentary when I first finished it to you guys, like, that was a video game, I guess. Like, it's not like it's not awful. It's not even that bad. It's just kind of there. It plays itself very safe, and even when and the characters are just so lame. I know I keep repeating this, but I can't find a better way to describe them. They're just lame. And 5, yeah, 5 is it's complicated in its problems. Let's just say.
Let me check. I'm checking instead something curious of if we already know some reception about Gears Tactics instead, since it's already come out.
One thing,
Yeah, that's actually a good point.
thing-
I haven't actually. Sorry, go ahead. Oops.
One thing I've noticed with Microsoft IPs is that when they reach the 4th game, the quality tends to go rather downhill.
Yeah.
There was this, and there's Halo.
And Forza Horizon 4, because Forza Horizon 4,
Even if it's not numbered, the 4th Fable game wasn't really that super interesting, to be honest.
I mean, it has a lot of it's a bloody numbered curses. Yeah, with Capcom, it's the 6th installment in the series. With EA, it tends to be the 4th one.
which is interesting in comparison.
Wait, is Mega Man 6 that bad?
No. Mega Man 6. I still like Mega.
For the most part.
I don't know.
Mega Man 6. Okay.
I don't know. I still think Mega Man 6 is fine enough. Like it's much better than fucking 8, for example. Ugh.
Okay. Here's the thing. Mega Man 6 was before Capcom's Curse of 6 happened. That sort of started around the time with stuff like Mega Man X6. And mind you, I don't think X6 is that terrible, but I will not deny that it is. It can be a chore if you don't know how to break that game properly.
Honestly, I like it better than 5, to be honest.
Oh, are you like X6 better than X5?
Oh, you mean X? Oh, I thought you were talking about the classic ones. Never mind.
No. I was talking about X6. Like, I'd say X6 is
then.
where Capcom's
Ignore
curse of... yeah, I'd say, like, well, X6 is where Capcom's curse with the number 6 began.
Okay, then.
But yeah.
Sure.
Anyway, I checked. It's Gears Tactics reception seems to have been positive so far, though it doesn't seem to be taking that much detail.
I'm actually wondering who wrote it. Let me see.
The Steam reviews. Actually, it should be stated here. No, it doesn't say. It only says the designer and the composer. Weird. But still, the Steam reviews seem to be just saying pretty much the same thing. They enjoyed the product, and it still keeps the traditional Gears atmosphere, at least from what they're saying.
So, better than Gears 5. Got it.
Well, I guess.
That's not very hard, to be honest.
Well, we'll have to see still, especially since the game is out still only on PC and not on the Xbox One.
Let me just real quick maybe check if I can find some other credits, or if I can find who wrote the game. I have yet to see a playthrough of Gears Tactics, so I don't know how good the story is. But to answer your question, Dwebs, that's the thing, Dwebs. And oh yeah, never mind. Let me first answer Teo. Actually, Teo, most Fable fans will tell you that that Fable 3 was not as good as the previous two. And
I know. Fable 3 has some decent idea, but they're just so squandered. That video that Angry Joe did, I think it was like top 32 reason Fable 3 sucks. I honestly think still holds up to this day in how poorly optimized the game was, and how much I keep forgetting the name of the guy who was at the head of Lionhead Studios had these ads so much of his ads.
Peter Molyneux, that's it.
Peter Molyneux, I think it was you.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but disdain about Fable 3. Like, a lot of people credit that as being what killed the franchise off until there was news of a Fable 4 coming.
Well, that was the thing, Jova.
There was still Fable Journey, wasn't there?
Like I said, it has very interesting ideas. It's just that it does some very, very weird, baffling things. Like, well, you do remember, since you mentioned the inventory system through the Sanctuary, how literally every quest does not. It not only has it give you the GPS marker, but it also leaves that golden trail that you need to follow, where basically your eyes are only fixed on that. You can't actually enjoy the scenery if you want to.
Yeah, and don't even get me started on the gifting system.
Well, that was for more like if you wanted to play co-op or stuff like that. I'm talking things that are irritating also in single-player mode.
Yeah,
anyway, I'm checking.
I guess I'll check this later.
Even IMDb doesn't list the writer. All it is Alex Grimbley as the executive producer. Edward White as the composer, and Frank Lalonde as art department.
It at
artist.
it at the very least stands a better chance of being made by a different developer, at least, since I don't really trust the coalition of this franchise, to be honest.
Well, keep in mind, like I said, Splash Damage are the guys who did the multiplayer aspect for the previous games since the coalition took over, and considering the multiplayer has been universally regarded as bad, yeah.
Well, more so 5 than 4, from what I can tell. Apparently 4's multiplayer was fine.
Again, it's baffling to me because these guys, Splash Damage, are famous, have been made a name for themselves back in the day for managing to optimizing the multiplayer of famous games like Wolfenstein.
It really is baffling.
Well, it also boils down to the fact that they're tied to whatever the coalition says they do. I mean, because the primary problem with Gears 5's multiplayer. Well, yeah, there is the lack of polish. Yes, there is that. But the primary egregious thing is the incredible
balancing.
Not just that. Well, okay, fine, the balancing as well. But it is, of course, the most horrible some of the most horrible monetization out there. I mean, it's not Metal Gear Survive bad, because I don't think there's any game that does monetization as bad as Metal Gear Survive. But
hey, whoa! Are you saying that you don't like having to pay up to $10+ for a save file?
No, I don't. Instead, I'll pay $20 for 2 skins. I'm not.
Good God.
That's a fourth of the game. Allow me to again. They went to the freemium route with a $60 game, because yes, most people got it on Game Pass for $1. I get that, but on stores, the physical edition at launch was $60. So. Whatever. Going back to what Duez was saying, that's the thing, Duez. The problem, Forza Horizon 4 is another case, because Forza Horizon 4 compared to Forza Horizon 3 is very games as a service-y compared to Forza Horizon 3. You know?
Wait. How do you make Forza more games as a service than it already is?
New car models, new paint jobs, new decals, stuff like that. Similar to Imagine CTR Nitro Fueled in that kind of sense.
Keep in mind, I'm going for what I was told, because I haven't actually played the games myself. And apparently they went up with dailies and daily things and
daily
shit.
Events,
daily event stuff. So basically, it's not and it took a lot of. It doesn't focus on the festival, on the actual festival that the series is named after, as much as the previous 3. Which kind of destroys the whole point.
That's messed up.
Yeah. The big issue is that the problem with Microsoft is that instead of creating new IPs to possibly replace the old ones, they just milk the ones they have, and that's it.
Don't get me wrong. Okay,
a lot of companies do that.
Okay. Well,
yeah, but here's the thing, but here's the big difference between Microsoft
when other companies do it, they manage to actually keep those games nice, fresh, and new.
Some of them,
for the most part, generally liked, or at least keep the franchises with their heads above water.
And even then, sorry, go ahead. I thought you were done.
Let's imagine this. Go ahead, Pedro. I'll continue my example after.
And even then, Dwibs, the primary difference between Microsoft and other companies is that they're a first-party company, so they're incredible. So a lot more is demanded by them because they actually have hardware to sell. Sony's still giving us God of Wars, but they also gave us new IPs like Days Gone and Dreams. So they're mixing it up and coming up with new stuff. And now Days Gone is even going to get a sequel. So Days Gone is going to become a new staple of the Sony roster. So they're creating.
Also Horizon.
So same thing with Horizon Zero Dawn. Exactly. Thanks to you.
Which that Days Gone example amazes me, considering that there was no hype going into it.
That's the thing, Dwebs. That's the thing, Dwebs. Days Gone was severely harmed by Sony sending review copies too soon, because by the time the game released to audiences, it already had a day one patch that fixed a lot of the problems that that reviewers were complaining about, and the games managed to sell well based on word of mouth because no actually it's
an actual strategic release date because gotta be honest, compared to the stuff that Sony has done for the PS4, Days Gone felt samey, to lack of a better term. It don't help a bit. It was slightly isolated compared to other releases. And
it came out in like April of last year.
And it was the new title of a studio that hadn't been done much for a long time, so it had that kind of underdog tone going for it.
That said, thanks to word of mouth of that people say it's not amazing or anything, but it's still a pretty good game. So people still bought, and it still sold really well, and it's gonna get a sequel now.
Hopefully, the sequel will improve on stuff. Don't get me wrong.
I'm hopeful it will.
I get that Days Gone was, in a precarious position, but having seen and played it in action, it's not necessarily something I'd be rushing to go out of my way to play, seeing as how it's more or less a lot the same of what we got. Just that, look at how many zombies we can put on there, which I'll admit is interesting.
It's the Dead Rising tech demo idea, just, showcasing how much, bodies we can have, but doing things at the same time. But also, in that kind of sense, also the Pikmin style.
Yeah, but to continue my argument...
Oh, God.
That's the big issue to this is that, again, like, it's same thing with Nintendo. Nintendo keeps coming up with new stuff like ARMS and Splatoon instead of just dumping Mario and Zelda games on us,
Can I make my point now? I was actually going to do that regarding Nintendo.
Go ahead.
To continue the point, actually, okay, and even still, let's look at how Nintendo have maintained a lot of their franchises, F-Zero notwithstanding. For the most...
Chibi Robo?
Okay, Gio, let's not make people cry about that one.
Exactly my point, Joe. Unfortunately, for as much as we're doing fine nowadays, thanks to like what you mentioned, ARMS and Splatoon, for example, Nintendo is also a plethora of IPs that they just used to experiment it, and since they were not successful, they left it to rot. Like, for example, also codename Steam, for example.
That's literally one thing, though. They're a lot more upfront with them being more experiments. It's not like they try and lead people around with false hope, unlike other franchises here. But let's talk about how well Nintendo do maintain the franchises of theirs that actually work. Namely stuff like Mario, Zelda, Animal Crossing, Smash Brothers, the works here and there. Those franchises have been maintained very well. Like, when it comes to Mario, okay, the worst thing people can say is, new Super Mario Brothers 2, when it comes to, main Mario stuff here. Obviously not talking about spin-offs, but the Mario brand has been maintained pretty strong. And even what's arguably the worst game of the main ones isn't necessarily a bad game. It's just one that's, a bit visually bland and feels way like there could have been more new stuff to it. But all the same, it still has run pretty strong. Same with the Zelda one, a franchise that has had so many different genres within it, but more often than not, there's always going to be a fan base for it. Regardless of what their likes or dislikes may change to be, each title so far has managed to be enough of a success. And then you got Smash Brothers, whose latest entry is literally the highest grossing fighting game that there is, mind you.
Well, that's also of being a crossover. In terms of natural Nintendo IPs, still, Zelda and Mario are still the two biggest contenders. It feels well, aside from those two, Nintendo goes on a rotation between a couple of medium-sized ones, between Animal Crossing, Star Fox, and Metroid. In a couple, rotating between them in a couple of years. And then there are the more relative, not there's like a third category for stuff like, say, Pikmin, for example, and then there are the new entries that are experimental things. I think Splatoon right now is in second category in terms of position. We'll have to see what they want to do with it. Not to mention,
Dwebs, Microsoft is a $1 trillion company. They're by far the ones that have the most money of the free console makers. that we have right now.
and yet
so you,
you know,
so you-
they've been always able to make the most powerful console lately. For
And
the
yet,
last
in all these,
generation.
in all these years, they showcase such a lack of creativity in creating first-party titles. Not
It's
just
like-
in quantity, but also quality. I argue, not in a sense necessarily of necessarily just bad game. In terms of actually being visually, because aside from Halo and Halo, Gears,
and Forza.
Fable, and to an extent Forza, all their other IPs. They tried to do something, but they either lacked or they got ignored by that.
Not just
you
that,
know.
the big problem is that they don't cultivate their new IPs. Like for example,
That too.
Sunset Overdrive. We could have gotten a sequel. Insomniac wanted to make a sequel. The fans wanted a sequel, but Phil Spencer didn't like that game, so we're not going to get a sequel. And this is another problem.
Ignoring the fact that Sunset Overdrive was considered one of the saving graces of the Xbox One back in the day.
All right, everybody. See you for the next part.
See ya.
Yeah.